Scene 4 of the play, or Act 1, Scene 4, depending on which version you've got, is where we see that Wheel of Fortune starting to turn for Lear. So his daughters are starting to really turn against him. It opens though with Kent on stage. Now Kent's now in the disguise, so Lear's banished him. He's come back on with a new disguise. And he basically opens by saying, you know, I'm speaking a different accent, but it's because of good intent on line 2, my good intent. Now this is a bit of a contradiction by Shakespeare. We've had these characters who were sort of semi-in disguise before. Edmund, Goneril, Regan have all sort of been in disguise. They've all said things that they don't quite mean or hidden their true personalities. Here we get Kent doing the same thing, but here obviously it's much more positive. It's actually a mark of loyalty. He's in disguise so that he can carry on serving Lear. But again, it's that fact that Shakespeare's really drawing our attention to the fact that this play is full of contradictions. There's no single meaning. Castan talks about the fact that in Shakespeare, you know, that there's no single reading seems to work, whether it's the gods or whether it's human weakness or whether it's just fate that causes problems. And here we get that. Shakespeare doesn't want us to have one single interpretation here. And that carries on line 6, where Kent says that Lear shall find him full of labour. In other words, you know, you'll find me hard working. Is that loyal or is that naive? I think Shakespeare wants us to ask that question. Is Kent part of an old, outdated past where it's totally feudal? In other words, if you're a lower class character, you serve your master no matter what. I think Shakespeare's drawing our attention to the fact that Lear is this old type of king, this old feudal king who's a little bit out of touch. For Kent to now be blindly following him, I think Shakespeare's maybe suggesting that in some ways that is something that does need to change. At the end of the play, Kent basically says, I'm going, I don't fit in the new world. And I think Kent is positive in the sense that he's loyal, but he's also naive. He's quite anachronistic. In other words, he can't quite fit in with this new type of world that's sort of coming. Line 22, 23, Lear asks him, who would thou serve? Kent answers, you. So we get Lear refer to Kent as thou, the less respectful form. Kent reply with you. So Kent in scene 1, you know, called him thou, disrespectful term. Here, the roles have gone back to normal, you know. Lear uses the thou, Kent uses a much more respectful you. Again, it's gone back to that feudal system. But I don't think that's entirely positive. On line 30, Kent describes himself as someone who can keep on his counsel, ride, run, and mar a curious tale in telling it. In other words, if a story's entertaining, Kent can ruin it. By telling the story, Kent can ruin it. We've had these very eloquent characters, Edmund, Goneril, Regan, who are obviously very negative, who are Machiavellian and scheming characters who use language to their own purposes. But is Kent's lack of grasp of language any good either? I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's the case actually that Kent's better off because he can't speak so much. Commode talks about the danger of language. You know, language breaks down in the play because nobody can use it properly. But I guess there's a bit of an argument there that language isn't all bad. And actually, you know, Kent going, oh, well, I can't use language properly. That's not entirely positive. That's somebody who accepts a feudal system, who goes, I will just blindly serve Lear because he's my king. You know, Cordelia didn't blindly do what Lear wanted. She stood up for what was right. Edgar does the same, and I think there's that real sense here that Shakespeare's suggesting things do need to change, not through the Machiavellian characters, but through characters who do, you know, allow that feudal system to be changed, so that the Jacobean audience would watch this and go, actually, yeah, well, on the one hand, thank God we've got a more religious, more noble society, but also the audience wouldn't get complacent. They would think, we do actually need to question these things. The servant says to Lear on about line 68, since my young lady's going into France, sir, the fool hath much pined away. Now, some people argue that that's just a joke, basically, that the fool and Cordelia were played by the same actor, and this is a bit of a joke for the audience at the time who would watch this, by saying, oh, Cordelia's gone and now the fool's a bit upset. They'd know that it was the same actor, basically, who was having to run between the two parts, who were never seen on stage at the same time. You could argue that. Equally, though, you could argue that it's just about the duality between Cordelia and the fool. They're set up again as being very similar. The fool's got fool's licence. He can say what he wants. He can be rude, but he gets away with it because he means well and is loyal. Cordelia's very much the same. And set up alongside Kent, that seems like a much more positive alternative, doesn't it? These characters who don't just blindly follow their boss or their leader or their king or their father, who actually are able to, for the right reasons, to sort of stand up to them. Lear comes in, he's wearing his cock's comb, which would basically be like a cockerel sort of comb that is a standard mark of the fool. The fool would also stand downstage, so they would stand a little bit close to the audience so that we associate with them a little bit more. Again, I think Shakespeare, just like with Cordelia, wants us to associate with these characters. The Jacobean audience couldn't really associate with King because he's a bit old-fashioned, he's a bit out of date, but they couldn't equally associate totally with these Machiavellian evil characters. I think the Fool and Cordelia are the ones that we kind of, agree with. That's shown on line 94 where the Fool offers his coxcomb to Kent. He says, you might as well have this. And Kent says, why? The Fool says, why? For taking one's part that's out of favour. In other words, you're a fool because you're following Lear when clearly he's coming down on the Wheel of Fortune. He's on the way down. But obviously that's ironic because the Fool's saying that while following Lear. So again, it's a contradiction. The Fool knows it's a stupid thing to do and he's accepting it's a stupid thing to do, but he's doing it too because it's the right thing to do. So again, there's that contradiction. The Fool and Cordelia seem to be better at dealing with that. And then we get the Fool sings a song on line 130, and then we get a great little exchange, top of page 131, about line 121, 122. Lear says, this is nothing, Fool, and the Fool says, then like the breath of an unfeed lure, you gave me nothing for it, can you make no use of nothing, uncle? And Lear says, no, nothing can be made of nothing. Basically, Lear says, that song's a load of rubbish, it's nothing to me. The Fool says, well, yeah, of course it is, because you didn't pay me anything, you gave me nothing for it, so of course it's not. But it's very much like the exchange with Cordelia, isn't it? The repetition of nothing and nothing can be made of nothing. Again, the Fool and Cordelia are echoing each other. And we get that sense, again, that actually nothing is really important in this play. That everything has to be destroyed and break down for things to come back and for things to improve. And that's really, really crucial then when we get onto page 132, because the Fool starts talking about an egg. On line 147, he says, give me an egg, nuncle, and I'll give thee 2 crowns. Okay, it's one of the Fool's riddles. Basically, what he's saying is, if you crack an egg, you're left with 2 crowns. You're left with the 2 bits of shell that look a bit like a crown. The Fool's point is that it's empty. So Lear's crown basically is like an eggshell. It's empty. He's not got any power. He's got the crown, but he's not got anything with it. Which is obviously true, and he's partly playing on the fact that Lear's not really got the power that he wants. But equally, an egg is an image of rebirth, and an egg is an image of new life. And so when we go back to what we just had with the nothing lines, we get the sense again, like Cordelia, that the Fool is part of this new, more positive world that actually could replace the old in a much more positive sense. It's carried on to page 133, when the Fool says to Lear, they made thy daughters thy mother. In other words, you've taken your daughters and you've given them the power of a mother over you. To a Jacobean audience, that'd be really unnatural. It's a very patriarchal society still, and the idea of women having more power than men would be unheard of almost. Obviously, there are exceptions. Queen Elizabeth's not long died, so they are used to having a woman in charge. But traditionally, the woman wouldn't be expected to do that. So partly this is the Fool basically saying, that you've done something really unnatural. Shakespeare's emphasising the fact that Lear has just done something that's against nature. But also, again, it's an image of rebirth, isn't it? There is mother, Cordelia is a mother figure. She's a little bit like the Virgin Mary with the image of the washed eyes and the holy water flowing from her. And we get the sense that actually she is the chance of a new, new way forward, I guess. Lear, top of page 134, says, methinks you are too much of late in the frown. Really, really tiny line, but really crucial. Remember earlier on he was saying we and I, he's using the royal we, here, me. Okay, so he's losing that power over his language and it starts to fracture as the scene goes on. Goneril comes on, bet line 192. She refers to the Fool, she says, you are all licensed for. So Fool's licence is the idea that the Fool can say what they want because nobody really takes them seriously. It's called Fool's licence. Mack in his essay argues that Shakespeare's got Fool's licence. He can criticise Jacobean society and King James, but nobody really takes it too seriously. But again, there's that sense that the Fool, can do these things and can speak the truth without being, quite so evil as some of the other characters. And then bottom of page 135, Lear starts asking lots of questions. It becomes really fractured. Doth any here know me? Why, this is not Lear. Doth Lear walk thus, speak thus, wear his eyes? So we get this image of blindness which echoes throughout the play with Gloucester as well. These old men becoming blind and losing the grip of the world. But all the questions as well. Lear referring to himself in the third person. It's showing he's starting to fracture, which sets up the second half of scene 4 and indeed the rest of the play.